but you never figure them out. It was supposed to be the introduction, the front of the Sefer, and the Rebbe said no. So it's included, if you look into the first volume, the Sicha at the end of the first volume of the encyclopedia. And that is what became known as Kuntris in Yonesh al Torah Chasidus. You have a question you want to ask? Okay. So anyway, why am I saying that? So in that Kuntris, the Rebbe says, and he gives a mashal from Modeh, that basically Chasidus is what he calls the fifth part of Torah, corresponding to Yechida, right? There's 5 aspects to the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. So Yechida is oneness, and it's so the Rebbe says it's like shemen, it's like compared to oil, which is mafeya al kula, it rises to the top. If you have other liquids, always something that's oily rises to the top. And the Rebbe says that Chasidus is the energy that enlivens every other part of Torah. So in other words, it's not chas v'sholem outside of Torah, it's an aspect of Torah that enlivens the other parts of Torah. And to understand what I just said, you have to study that kuntris, you have to study it very well. Okay? If you really want to, and it's an important work to understand, and it's a difficult work. I'm not going to say it's an easy work to understand, but it's very crucial. And our shiurim today from mashpiyim, both in English and Yiddish and Hebrew, on that kuntris, and it would be worthwhile to learn it. I don't, did you ever have a shiur here in the community? Rabbi Denberg never gave a shiur on that. Okay, anyway. So I say that because we encounter, as you've seen, Zachariah, you know, chazals that the Rabbeim bring, and on one hand you could say, like, it's like, what's the question? What's the issue? You know, the chazal, you know, have a way of resolving it, and at times the questions are better than the answers. So you have to understand that to appreciate a Maimer Chasidus, it's not about questions, it's not about answers. That's I think the difficulty for a Western thinker. And we're trained in the Western way of thinking. You know, Rabbi Zalman Posner has a book called Think Jewish, and I really urge you to read that book, because in that book he tackles this idea: what's Jewish thinking, Torah thinking, versus Western thinking. And basically, and I read this as a teenager, and then as an young, you know, as I got into the work of Shlichus and Kiruv and Hafotza, you know, and all that, it was very helpful, because he explains that it's two diametrically opposite ways of going about a sugya, a subject, an idea. There's a Torah way of thinking going about it, and there's a Western way of thinking. And we're not talking about a Western way, we're talking about within Torah a Western way of thinking. Right? And so Posner really tackles that, and it's a very, very, very important to understand that as well. So I say this because when you learn Chassidus and you see a question, you see an answer, and kind of, you know, either yeah, I got it, I don't, it turns me on, it doesn't turn me on, there are better answers in the commentaries of the Talmud, of the Chumash, you know. So you have to understand that that's not the ikar of a mimer. That's not what the mimer is there to get you excited about and thinking about. It's the content, the bulk of the mimer. You know that there are certain maimorim. If you look into the maimorim of the fifth Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Ber of Lubavitch, where it begins with the words L'hav and Inyan, to understand the concept, it doesn't even have a heading, a posik, or a chazal. And in fact, many Maimorim were that way. And then when the Rabbeim, that's when they said it. When it came time to actually write the Maimer, they put a heading and an end to it, so that it makes more sense when you read it on paper, when you learn it on paper. Well, what do we see from that? At the beginning and the end, that's not really the mimer. The mimer is the subject matter of godliness and divinity that's being discussed. A mimer like this, which is called in Chabad language an avoda mimer. There's two types of mimerim, two types of Chabad discourses. One's called Haskalah mimer or mimerim, the discourses that deal more with the intellectual, right, the philosophical, and then there is mimerim like this one, where the subject matter pretty much is avoda, is service, refinement, character development, and improvement. That's called avoda mimerim. So, in both, the subject matter is what's ikar. So I just took a few minutes to give you a general overview of the structure of a mimer, and therefore the questions and answers, and sometimes like in here, it could be a page long, Marpech HaToyim and the Chazal, you know what I'm saying? But you don't need the mimer. You don't need a mimer for that. Go into Shas, go into the Chumash with the Mefarshim. I'm saying that's not what you need the mimer for. The mimer is there to motivate you intellectually and emotionally to be a better servant of Hashem. And the whole content of a mimer is elokus, is godliness. There were Hasidim that in the olden days we didn't have Sforim. And if the things, and there were Hasidim that I heard this from Mashpiyim, they would learn, and then they would turn the page, and the next page didn't connect to the page before, because they had torn pages, and they learned it as though it's a continuation. Why? Because they were driven for the godliness here. They're looking for God. So what's the difference? If intellectually the question, the answer don't match, I find God on this page and I find Hashem on this page. But getting back to what we're learning here, it's all about the idea of authority and how someone who's put in a position of authority needs to deal with the people who he directs. And this is what we're saying. And the Rebbe said on page Reish Yud Ches, he began giving us what we call the criteria for criticism, that David Levy has been announcing constructive criticism. And what are the points? So point one was, David, let's see, do you remember? What was point one?